Woo! The golden stallion of the tech world is here for you to talk about something. It's not exactly the tech world, though. Certainly, I think a lot of arguments could be made about how this influenced the tech world in a very real way, much like it's one of its competitors, as some people have considered it over the decades, at being Star Trek. But I'm here to talk about Star Wars. Don't misunderstand me. So what you're getting here is a little something extra, because originally normally I do a Star Wars update for patrons only, on Patreon. This is actually going to be a public video. I missed doing the one for July. I thought I did it and I didn't. So, and I think I was all set to, because a book came out, which I will be reviewing here among doing other things. A book came out that's Battlefront II, Inferno Squadron, which is a prequel novel to Battlefront II, the game that's coming out, I believe, end of October or November. But I thought that I already got people in the live chat on the YouTube live chat saying Han shot first. Boy, that's a conversation to have, because I don't want to get lost in the weeds, but I'll just say this quickly before we get into the rest. But yeah, this is a preview. If you've never the Patreon content, if you haven't been involved in the live videos that I do and whatever else, this is a rare opportunity for you to see what this is all about and how the stallion performs live. So I'm going to give it to you. And yeah, Han shot first. I'll tell you, that is the singular thing that comes up in my mind as far as the special editions go for Star Wars that came out in 97 and had been updated all the way up to like 2007. That's like the one thing where shit, that sucked. Like, otherwise, all the changes made in the special editions, even in the Blu-ray versions, like where Vader, when he goes to pick up the Emperor and kill him, on the second Death Star, and now they added in where he says no. I actually like that. I think it makes sense, especially based off of, episode 3 coming off of that and whatever else. I mean, because now there's like an emotional connection between those moments of realizing kind of two lies that Emperor Palpatine, told Vader. So now I think it makes a lot of sense. It creates a verbal cue that was pretty brilliant on George Lucas's part to add that in. Though also, I'll admit right after that, of course, the song Yub Nub, right? Celebrate the Love that the Ewoks sing. I do miss that song. That song just puts an instantaneous smile on your face. The Ewoks do too. I love the Ewoks. I talk about that all the time. People are like, oh, they're it's the Care Bears are so stupid. Oh yeah, because the Care Bears like take Han Solo and roast him on an open fire. Right. Yeah, they're Care Bears, all right. No, there's a bunch of badass motherfuckers. Anyway, Sterner shot first too. No, he didn't. I prefer the despecialized editions. Those are great work. Visually, those are very stunning work. I imagine sooner or later, Disney's going to do something with that original trilogy, probably after 2021 or something like that, where they're going to do something similar to the despecialized editions, but that's just a theory of mine. So anyway, got a few people watching already, and I didn't even share this. So I don't know exactly how this works, if because I set it for public. Usually I set it for private or unlisted when I'm sharing it with just Sovereign Tech patrons, but if it's public, I think everybody that's subscribed to me gets like a little notification that drops down, say on their phone, or maybe they get a desktop notification of some kind that, Sovereign Tech is live, or Brian Sovereign is live. I think the channel is under Brian Sovereign, which is for a variety of reasons, because I do a whole lot more than Sovereign Tech. Of course, there's the entire Sovereign universe. And certainly the Sovereign universe has been heavily inspired. Every aspect of it has been heavily inspired by Star Wars. So it was, this is why I love to get to talk about it. And of course I tell people all the time, whenever a new Star Wars movie comes out, I always dedicate, Sovereign Tech, the show, it can be, it's fun, but it's serious as a heart attack. But I will, I'll dedicate an entire half of an episode. We only do one episode a week so far, though we're getting closer to that goal on Patreon. If you want to go to sovereigntech.com to sign up for Patreon, you can, and you can get this content on the regular. But, I only do it once a week, but I will give an entire half show to reviewing a new Star Wars movie. No problem at all. I'll do that in a second. So, that's how big a deal all of this is. Got another one. Let's see. Ewoks rotisseried first. Yes, they did. They were eating human beings. Anyway, let's get into some of what I want to talk about here. There's a few things I'm going to get into. I want to do a review of the Battlefront II prequel book, and then I want to talk about a lot of the not so much the episode 8 news for The Last Jedi, but I want to talk about the episode 9 news, which there was a lot of it. I want to talk about some of the Han Solo movie news, speaking of Han Solo. Maybe we'll talk a little bit about comics, and we'll get into some other little subjects here and there. But let's do this. I was really impressed myself. So the new book, it just came out July 28th, and I think that's what I had in mind. Like I said, that there was supposed to be a July update. Usually I can listen to these books inside of, and I do listen to them on Audible. I always pre-order them. It's very exciting, for me to do, because like it kind of, pre-ordering stuff, even when it's digital content, it sort of makes me feel like, like the old days when you used to line up at GameStop, or when it used to be Electronics Boutique or something, you'd be there for like the midnight release of something, and it's just very exciting. And Audible, I think, releases things at like 3 p.m. Eastern, which I guess would be midnight Pacific time, which would make sense because, Amazon's based in the West, or, Western US there. So anyway, I love getting those pre-orders. And as soon as I get that email or that notification that it's available, like, I just love hitting that download button, away they go. I didn't get to listen to this book. Like, I started listening to it right away, but I didn't get to finish it right away. Like I said, usually, I'm done with these books in a day, because I'll listen to them on Audible at like 2.3x or 2.5x speed. And and I'll be done with them. Even a full size, full novel like this, like Inferno Squadron, I'll be done with it, inside of 5 hours or so. And then I will, I'll go ahead and, do the review. So I'm reviewing it here. It took me a little bit to get to this one, but it was well worth it. Like, I wish I got to it sooner, because this is probably, Inferno Squadron is probably my second. It might be my second favorite book of the bunch that have come out. Second or third. It's pretty close. Second or third of the books that have come out as far as the new canon goes, since 2013 or 2014, maybe, is when the first novel was Heir to the Jedi, the Luke Skywalker story there that came out. Anyway, so, right now my top ranking is still Thrawn by Timothy Zahn, the new Thrawn novel that came out in April. That's still top of the heap, easily. That is such a phenomenal book. I can't believe there aren't more people that don't dig it, and that I think they didn't get it. In fact, the Thrawn novel, I think, was so hot, and I don't know, maybe people just didn't get it, because now they're actually going to do, and this is kind of weird, they're going to do a comic book adaptation of the novel, which I don't exactly understand. My hope is not that that's that weird, because and we're going to get back into Inferno Squadron, don't worry. Back in the 90s, when the original Thrawn trilogy came out, which is now Legends, it's not officially canon anymore. When the original Thrawn trilogy came out, Dark Horse did do a comic book adaptation of all 3 books, of the, Heir to the Empire, was it Dark Force Rising and The Last Command. I think those are the 3 books. I do 90% of the show I do from memory, folks. So if I got it a little off, anyway, they did do that. So, so it's not like unheard of to do that sort of thing, but part of the problem is that now there's not like a full hierarchy like there used to be in what used to be called the expanded universe of Star Wars. But there's a little bit of a hierarchy now as far as how, what parts of Star Wars are considered canon. Technically, almost everything, except for, unless you're talking about like the Freemaker Adventures or something like that, technically almost everything that comes out for Star Wars is considered canon. Okay, whether it's a book, a comic book, if a video game has like a single player story to it, like the Battlefront II single player is a canon story, which is really exciting. If it's supposedly, and there's been some talk about this, because there's that, I don't think it's Edge of the Empire, or it's Galaxy's Edge, which is this kind of virtual reality attraction that's going to be set up in Disney. I think by the end of the year, it's going to be happening pretty quick. With virtual reality, you can roll out that fast, as compared to doing the entire park that has to come out in 2019, or maybe it's something Edge of the Empire, something like that. Anyway, whatever. I might be getting that confused with one of Fantasy Flight's flight games, one of their little, one of their role-playing game things. Anyway, so all those things are considered canon. Now, someone just asked, what does canon mean? Canon means that and it's a phrase used, and I know some people take issue with this, and I completely understand. Canon is the notion that, like, it's like in Catholicism. Okay, there are books, there are saints, there are people that are canonized, meaning that they are part of the official faith. So it's kind of a religious term, which is honestly fine for Star Wars now anyway, certainly since Disney has owned it. Where canon means that what happens in it is just as legitimate as what happened in, say, if you watched Return of the Jedi, The Empire Strikes Back, or, A New Hope, or Episode 1, or anything like that. That's what canon means. And it's cool. Canon, I think, is actually a pretty important thing, because it allows you to have a common frame of reference within which to talk to other fans, fellow fans, about things like I'm doing right now. When I talk to you about the Inferno Squadron novel, I'm talking about something that has bearing and effect on everything that you know of as Star Wars, today anyway, ever since Disney bought it out, again, back in 2013. So, and it gives you, sometimes it'll give you hints as to maybe what's going to come in the future. That's certainly been happening a lot in the novels, and what I mean by what's coming in the future might be referencing to Episode 9, but we'll save that kind of talk for later. So anyway, yeah. So the point I was getting to with the hierarchy of canon is that, so now right now the rule is, and this was the rule also back when it was the expanded universe. The rule is, if it's in the movie, like, the movies are the top of the rung. So what happens in the movies, you don't question what happens in the movies, even if you have, say, the novelization of Force Awakens or a novelization of Rogue One or something like that. If anything in the novelization or in the comic books, say, adaptations of those, kind of stand in contrast or are different from what's in the movie takes precedence. What happens in the movie is really the big deal. And they said, good explanation. Thanks. Yeah, no problem. So with that, okay, what happens when it's a novel and then the novel gets turned into another format, like comic books, like what's happening with Thrawn? Which one takes precedence? Does the novel take precedence, or does the comic book take precedence? Honestly, I would think the answer is the novel, because you have more time and more space to flesh things out and you could be more detailed. But I wouldn't be surprised if Lucasfilm comes out, and they're the ultimate deciders of this, if Lucasfilm comes out and says, no, the comic book is actually the more canon work. Because the comic book would be the one that more people could easily digest and disseminate, and it's more easy to disseminate, I guess. So, we'll see how that ends up, how that shapes up. I'm sure that question is going to come up. The best thing I think that could happen with the comic book is to do what the excellent Rogue One comic book adaptation is doing, which is the adaptation of the movie Rogue One, where it's actually giving you deleted scenes. It's giving you a little something extra. It's not just one-to-one. Okay, where you're just like, because that's what happened with The Force Awakens, and the comic book adaptation was fucking pointless, because just watch the movie. Like, why the hell would you read the comic book, especially when the comic book came well after the movie came out? Like, it was stupid. It was a waste of ink. So we'll see how that all happens, but I kind of hope that there's a little something extra, and maybe a little something extra at the end of what happened with Thrawn, a little more explanation of what's going on with the Chiss Navy and all this. But maybe we'll talk about that later when we get into Episode 9 news. So anyway, like I was saying with, with my favorite books, Thrawn is at the top of the list. That's how we got into that huge side tangent. Under that would be, this is where it gets debatable, but ironically, they're both written by the same person. I would put either Dark Disciple, which is written by Christy Golden, or I would put now Inferno Squadron, which is also written by Christy Golden. So either one, and I think the reason that I initially want to say Inferno Squadron may be the better book of those two, and those two are kind of related. We'll explain that in a minute. Is because, and this is something else I want to extrapolate more on, is that particularly with the audiobook, which again is the way that I experience this, and it is the way that I recommend experiencing Star Wars novels if you can. Not all of them have audiobooks. Most of them do, like 99% of them do. Because you get a few things. You get the sound effects. You get like a soundtrack. You know, like it's extra. Even though I'm sure everybody that's a Star Wars fan can hear all that in their head when they're reading these books, right? But you get that, but then also you kind of get to hear the voices of these people. And this is more so important with the Inferno Squadron novel, because the woman who, again, this is a prequel novel to the game Battlefront 2. Now, we saw the Battlefront 2 trailer. We've seen it. They've already had a couple trailers come out. It was at E3. I think there was another one at D23, the Disney convention. And so we kind of know the story that it's about this group called Inferno Squadron, which is why the book is called Inferno Squadron, that, sees what happens to the second Death Star, and now they're on a mission of revenge. So there's a multiplayer component to Battlefront 2, but there's a single player component, which is the most exciting for me personally. And I already have it pre-ordered. I'm ready to go. Once it comes out, I'm golden, baby, just like Christy Golden. Anyway, so they used motion capture, or what they call mocap in the biz. They use mocap actors and actresses, and they use Janita Gavankar for Iden Versio or Versio. Iden Versio. There's an importance to that name. And she's the main character. They used her and they used her face and everything. I mean, and she has a fantastic look. She's a gorgeous, obviously very intelligent, and a genuine Star Wars fan. I can say that. She's totally legit, and it works, and it's believable, right? Now, she actually voiced the audiobook of Battlefront 2 Inferno Squadron, and that's what makes it a little extra special this time around. You don't always get this with Star Wars audiobooks, but this is a unique, and there's something to talk about all this, and I'll get into that later, about kind of, Janita Gavankar being sort of this total package and kind of the future, I think, of a lot of media. But that makes it a little extra special, because you're really hearing exactly what you'll be hearing when you play Battlefront 2. And because the character of Iden Versio is based off of the look of Janina, you have in your head, even though it's great when you can just use your imagination, and there's plenty of opportunity for that, certainly, in the novel still. It's really cool to have in your head exactly what this person looks like, and not just like a video game version of the person. Exactly what they look like in real life, because Janina's, been all over the place, promoting everything Battlefront 2. And I think it's a wise move on Electronic Arts' part, as well as, Disney's part and Lucasfilm's part. In all of this. So anyway, the book, I'm probably going to give it the number 2 slot. This is not, and spoiler alerts, folks, spoiler alerts. I'm doing a live video, so I can't make anything pop up on the screen. Eventually I'll get to that point. But anyway, this is a very dark novel. Like, this is not a happy novel whatsoever. I mean, it ends to some degree with victory. Of course, victory for the Empire. Obviously, the Inferno Squadron Inferno Squadron is like this elite special forces that gets created in this book, by the Empire, for the Empire, to kind of solve sort of the deeper problems that they realize was necessary after the first Death Star gets destroyed. That maybe, and it's a brilliant thing. And the book explores this, and this is where the book really shines, is when it's talking about military tactics and a lot of that. Because it's describing how, the rebels, what they expect from the Empire are massive numbers, massive ships, just massive. That's what they're constantly expecting from the Empire. And so Inferno Squadron gets made to be like this special, almost like a SEAL team, if there was an earthly, kind of example of it, almost like a SEAL team that can, that they don't expect. They don't expect such an individualistic, low number, specialized approach from the Empire, because that's just not how the Empire is operated. And it's not largely how the Old Republic operated, even though I know about ARC troopers and all that, with the clone army and everything. So that's a really cool explanation. They break a lot of that down, and it kind of plays off, even though it's only like 4 members to Inferno Squadron, it kind of plays off like a Dirty Dozen, that style of story, not with so much comedy. But I mean, this is a really dark book, in my opinion. Even when one of the characters, who they make very clear sounds and kind of, I mean, she's in her 20s, but sounds and looks like a very young gal. Again, spoiler alerts. they say, look, if you're going undercover as a slave, we've got to make you look good. And she comes out and says, look, I know how I need to make it look. I mean, so, she gets, I mean, the book doesn't describe it in too much detail of what exactly happens, but what's implied is that she gets beaten and bruised by, and it all has to look legitimate, and she gets scarred and everything. I mean, like, it's really crazy. It's not like in Star Trek where usually if they go to a planet or if they need to make it look like somebody was like a Starfleet officer was a prisoner and they're going undercover, how they would put some kind of like makeup effect on them or something. Dr. Crusher would wave a wand, whatever, and there would be suddenly, oh, they have a bruise. No, this is serious. So that lends itself pretty, I mean, it's very different for Star Wars to get to this level of dark. What's nice about that is that it plays off of, because where this book starts is before A New Hope. So it plays off of Rogue One very nicely. In fact, that's certainly a point, kind of the connections to Rogue One we'll bring up in this. So yeah, it's an undercover story. Inferno Squadron gets to do some of the things that you would expect an elite group to be able to do. Sniping, a lot of this other stuff. But you don't really get to see them fully in action, which that's maybe the only negative that I have of the book. I don't really have any negatives other than that, is that it would have been cool to really see Inferno Squadron like in genuine action, doing all this stuff. I love Imperial stories ever since, and I don't know what started this, but like when I played Star Wars TIE Fighter back in, this would have been like 90, was that 94? Like this was a game, this is a flight sim. It was a sequel to the very popular and really groundbreaking, in my opinion, game X-Wing. And in TIE Fighter, you actually play as the Empire, and you think you're one of the good guys. And like there's side stories, there's points where you can like work with like these cloaked figures and become part of a secret order and everything. And I don't know, me at the time, I guess I was like 13 or so, 13, 14. Like I thought that was cool as shit, and I became an Imperial fan. Right from there, I was like, oh yeah, hell yeah, for the Empire, let's do this. And so I enjoy these kinds of stories where it's a very Imperial thing. I mean, and then of course you have Thrawn, at the same time, not long after that, because the first Thrawn book came out in 91, and I remember reading the Thrawn book when I was in like third grade. And I was just like, wow, Grand Admiral Thrawn's the coolest character ever, screw Luke Skywalker. I mean, I still love Luke Skywalker, but you get my point. So yeah, I've always had a, special place in my heart for the Imperials. And so this book delivers on all that. You get a nice look into kind of the Imperial mindset, and you find out a lot of things. Like you find out, again, spoiler alerts, you find out that the Empire, like what happened in Rogue One, what the Empire did to Jeddah, where they did a test fire and they destroyed the city of Jeddah with the first Death Star. You find out that they actually kept that quiet, and they said it was a mining accident. They like the larger galaxy had no idea that the Death Star at that time even existed, or that it was that it was being tested, and that it's what destroyed Jeddah. So that's kind of interesting. You get little hints of all that. There's definitely some explanation of what's the situation surrounding the first Death Star, from the first time it gets tested to when it gets destroyed, because the character of Iden Versio, you find out, she survives. She's one of the TIE fighter pilots for the Death Star that are like going after the X-Wing pilots. In fact, it seems to be pretty clear that that Iden Versio is the TIE pilot that kills Biggs Darklighter. And I think that's going to be really, really interesting, because we know in the game Battlefront II, in the single player storyline, that she's going to be going after Luke Skywalker, because she knows that he did the dirty business, as far as destroying, the claim that he killed the Emperor, he destroyed the second Death Star, blah, blah, blah. And this is going to be interesting, because I can picture a scenario where Luke Skywalker finds out she killed Biggs Darklighter, and he could like really, snap, as far as, maybe going to the dark side a little bit more or something like that. Like that could be a really fucking cool moment if they're going to run with that. I don't know, but the single player story for Battlefront 2 could have a really great reward with that moment. So I'm kind of expecting that, to be a thing. So yeah, Imperials, someone just said TIE Fighter Epic Days, Imperials +1, may the Sith be with you. Hell yeah. I love the Sith. They're all about passion and, well, anyway, there's something to be said about gray Jedis, but maybe we'll get into that a little bit later. So now with the rest of the book, like I said, it does kind of tie into it. It is playing around the time of A New Hope, which ties it to some degree with Christy Golden's other excellent book. And again, one that I either put in the, well, for right now, I'm just going to say it's in the number 3 slot, that being Dark Disciple, which was all about Asajj Ventress, what happened with her, as well as the character of Quinlan Vos. But there's a character she introduces in that I think is awesome. Very sexy, very cool character. It's a pirate character. It's a pirate captain, and it's a woman. She's a Pantoran woman. Lassa Rame, I think is how you pronounce the name. I know, I was just listening to the audiobook, and I can't remember how to pronounce the name. But anyway, it was so cool because I thought she was an awesome character that you experience. And she was actually in a short fiction also in Star Wars Insider. Star Wars Insider is not doing short fiction right now. But they do little short fiction in their magazine, which, by the way, if you read the Sovereign Tech newsletter, one of my inspirations for doing short fiction in the Sovereign Tech newsletter that has to do with the Sovereign Universe was because that's what Star Wars has been doing for some time, where they put little short fiction stories in their magazine that's all about news and very real things, but you get that hint of fiction that's canon. And so I was like, oh yeah, I want to do that. Anyway, so this character existed in, I forget which story it was that she was first introduced in an issue of Star Wars Insider. But Captain Rame or whatever, the Bloodbone Order is what her group is called. Really cool pirate character. I mean, really, she has like purple hair, blue skin, gold eyes. Hot, right? As far as, literary fictional characters go. Someone says, I hope Luke goes gray. Yeah. And then, if he goes gay, it's not going to happen, but that'd be all right too. Anyway, so that character makes a return in this, a brief return. And that was really cool to have Lassa Rame in it, because I think that's kind of the pirate factions of Star Wars are something that can be endlessly explored. That's something else that there's a lot of in this book, because it's very much a sequel to Rogue One, which I'm enjoying, because in the last Star Wars update that I did, I said there's so much more to Rogue One than the movie. To really get the movie, you need to experience kind of everything. You can add Inferno Squadron, not so much the game Battlefront 2, but the book Battlefront 2 Inferno Squadron. You can add that to being a sequel to Rogue One directly, because there's so much involved in it. Jyn Erso gets mentioned, in it, because a lot of the undercover work that Inferno Squadron's doing in this book is to infiltrate what remains of the partisans of Saw Gerrera's rebels, that, his faction that gets away. Of course, then they create like this new faction called the Dreamers. And that's sort of what you find out here, is that, and I understand why they're doing this, is there's just a ton of splinter groups that come out of all different areas of the Rebel Alliance, be it Saw Gerrera or something else. Like in this, they talk about the partisans, then there's the Dreamers, there's all these different groups. And the reason that they're doing that, obviously, and Disney is doing this not just with the Rebel Alliance, but also with other groups. Obviously, it's to create that larger universe that they can keep making stories for forever. I mean, because it will get boring. And I think that this was something that was getting tiresome in the expanded universe, not necessarily for me, but for others. And I understand that, where you had, like, it's just always Imperial Rebellion / New Republic. Like that's always seemingly the thing. And it's like, can't we have other people or something like that? Disney is obviously very interested and very invested in creating, other enemies, other heroes, other factions of all these different things. But maybe we'll break into that more in a minute. So, yeah, you get a lot of that. Again, the addition of Lassa Rame was great. I really enjoyed that. So let's break down a little bit more, because I have other news I want to get into, and I don't want this to run for 2 hours. Did I knock the camera? Holy shit. Anyway, I'm still getting used to doing video. Audio, got it down pat, but video, guess what? I can't stop. I have to keep on going. So anyway, and I have the new studio, and, probably I'll always be working on the studio. But anyway, So there's some little things in this. Now you have the character again of Iden Versio. I really feel like there's something in that name, because it almost sounds like Jyn Erso, and I sort of feel like Iden Versio is like the Imperial version, like she's the reverse. You get it, Versio? She's sort of the reverse of Jyn Erso. In fact, there's a point. It's one of the best lines in the book. Like I said, this book is really awesome. I mean, anytime a novel has like really great quotes in it, which a lot of novels don't, believe it or not. And I don't just mean Star Wars. I mean across the board. Anytime a novel has a genuinely great quote, that's something really special, especially one that'll stick out in your mind. And one that stuck out in my mind for me, it's towards the end. But Iden says, you say rebellions are built on hope. She says, you're wrong. Rebellions are built on hate, and you know it. And I was like, oh man, that's a badass line. Like I thought that was so cool, to hear that. And I get it. Like, I really understand. And I think there's truth in her statement. Rebellions aren't really built on hope. They generally are built on some kind of, notions of revenge or things like this, literary, in real life or in fiction. So I thought that was cool, but I think that's just a piece of the puzzle where you're getting the sense that the purpose of Iden Versio is to create, kind of what Jyn Erso was to be for the rebels, for the rebellion. Maybe I think we're going to see in the game of Battlefront II where Iden Versio is definitely carrying the torch of the Imperials, and will maybe help bring on some victory for the Imperials, just like Jyn Erso, helped bring on kind of the first major victory and in many ways made legitimate the Rebel Alliance during the time of Rogue One. So yeah, there's something to that. I really, really, really feel that like that name, I think there's some cleverness to because it's too close. Jyn Erso, Iden Versio. Yeah, I think there's a connection. So now the person who plays Iden Versio, like I said, Janita Gavankar, she is something else. Like her job reading the audiobook, obviously Christy Golden's work speaks for itself. I mean, she's just one of the best authors out there, especially when doing franchise work. She's done a lot of franchise work where she's written for other franchises besides Star Wars. And in my opinion, it's all rock solid. So Iden Versio, there you go. I'm confusing myself. Her playing Iden Versio and then her voice doing the voice work for the audiobook. Now, granted, I know a thing or two about audiobooks being done. Of course, I'm in love with an audiobook narrator, that being the lovely and hyper intelligent Dr. Stephanie Murphy. If you want to hire her, go to smvoice.info. She, Stephanie she's great at sort of working on her own and everything with whatever she happens to do. And she kind of follows her own direction. And I think that's the bulk of the way most audiobook narrators work. Granted, when you're dealing with something as big a deal as Star Wars, I'm sure that Janina has a director. Like there's a director in the room with her saying, "Oh no, say it like this, say it like this," and it shows. But she, regardless of whether it's a director or how that all shaped up, it was phenomenal work. Like it was just such a cool. It was great to hear, you could picture it because you know what Janina looks like. You could hear it because she's going to do the voice, and she's already done the voiceover, like in the trailers for Battlefront 2 and everything. It made everything more visceral. It made everything more real. And I think this is going to end up becoming commonplace in, with any property, perhaps any franchise. For example, it's even happening with older franchises like the X-Files, where, Audible had those cold case files, right? That came out in July as well, where, David Duchovny, he lent his voice, Gillian Anderson lent her voice, to their respective characters. And that helps it become all the more real and exciting. In fact, I don't even think they released a novel, of those. They just said, no, we're going to do straight audio drama. So this kind of multimedia approach, which I also do with Sovereign Tech and was doing, I've been doing it for a long time now. I really see that as the future. So what I think is interesting about it is that, to pass off whatever media you create, obviously it's easy for Disney because they can spare no expense on the people that they get. But just speaking maybe entrepreneurially, if you want to kind of copy the success, maybe you have your own science fiction, or fantasy franchise or whatever that you're or space opera that you're shooting for. I think it's helpful if your characters, if everything you write, if you can actually deliver the goods, like if you can almost bring it to reality. In fact, I'm reminded of, speaking of Disney, I'm not saying that Disney didn't know how to do this or that they didn't have this idea already. In fact, very much they did. There's one of my favorite Disney movies, live action, from, I think it's from the 70s, was a Condor Man. Very influential film to me. Okay. I can't begin to, someday I'll do a review of that movie because I can't begin to tell you how influential that film is on me. In fact, if you ever wonder where the character name for Natalia comes from, well, Condor Man. Anyway, you'll get it. So, but the movie Condor Man is about this comic book artist who he creates this character called Condor Man that's very famous. He won't have Condor Man do anything in the comic books that can't be done in real life. So this artist whose name is Woody, he creates like this flying suit and like all this other stuff. And, because again, his feeling is that what really gets readers and what really gets people engrossed in his stories, in the Condor Man stories, again, this is a fictional movie, but he says what it is that it's real, that people know that what happens in the comic books could actually happen. And I think that using Janita Gavankar across the board with this and having her be out front as a marketing machine, just herself, be it when she was at, presenting at E3 or whatever. I think that touches on that, on that ability. And I think that's really clever. And I think that's really fucking badass, for them to do that. Somebody's mentioned about Condor Man, I'm guessing, said, I love that movie when I was little. Well, it's still great. So, but I'm glad I'm not the only one that ever saw it. Yeah, I absolutely love that movie. In fact, even the soundtrack, I wish somebody would release the soundtrack for Condor Man because that had an awesome theme to it. So cool. Anyway, so so I think that they're hitting on that. And that's that. In a world where you can't believe what you're seeing at any given moment, I think that gives people a really good grounding in reality and gives something a little extra punch. In fact, I talked about this on a recent Patreon Wednesday Q&A. We do Wednesday Q&As every week on Patreon where I answer the questions that get sent in to me, whatever they are. But we talked about it briefly where I went and saw Paige Peterson, who does the voice work for and who is the basis, physically for the character of Pixel. Okay, in the Sovereign Tech universe, in the Sovereign universe. When I saw her, I went to go see her in a Brazilian jiu-jitsu tournament. She was in the tournament, the real deal. She was awesome. Okay. It was so cool that wow, no, you know what? Pixel in real life is really badass. And I thought that was so great. And I promoted the hell out of it because I was like, this is so cool. It's the Sovereign universe kind of coming to life in a way. I think that that's kind of a future direction that any media, any kind of creative work that you're going for really should try and take. Doesn't have to. It can be huge without it. Andy Weir certainly isn't anything like The Martian, right? But when that's with no offense, I mean that with no offense. But yeah, I think that kind of to make things more legitimate is your differentiator today in a world where there's just so much fucking content, on the internet and whatever else. So anyway, they have a winner. In fact, I'd love it if Janita Gavankar would be in an actual movie at some point. She could totally deliver. She's got the acting chops. She has the amazing look. And Iden Versio is already probably just with the book alone, is in my top 5 of characters, as far as Star Wars characters. That's the other thing. That's the other takeaway from this is that, Iden Versio, she is so cool. I mean, she's really taken a top spot very quickly, and I can imagine the storyline in Battlefront II is going to even go, will be even more so. So let's talk a little bit about that. What might be the storyline with Battlefront II? We don't have a whole ton of details, but this notion of trying to keep the Empire alive and all that, you kind of get hints of this in Chuck Wendig's, Aftermath trilogy. There's a lot of talk of that. You never hear of Iden Versio in any of those conversations, but it's kind of there. And I wouldn't be surprised. Here's something that I'm kind of expecting, because eventually, considering with the Thrawn book, what happened there, and maybe keeping the end events of what happens in the Thrawn book alive in 2018 when they released the comic book, like we mentioned earlier, for the comic book adaptation of the book Thrawn. That book ends, spoiler alerts, that book ends with, the Chiss, kind of Thrawn's secondhand man in the Empire going off to work for the Chiss, which is the race that Thrawn belongs to, that live in the unknown regions. And they go to work for them because, like Thrawn says to the Emperor in that book, he says, look, there's dangers in the unknown regions that make the Empire look like kids play. You don't know what's coming after you. You don't know what's on the way. And so there's this bigger battle constantly kind of getting led up to, and you get hints of it in the Thrawn book. You get hints of it again in the Aftermath trilogy from Chuck Wendig, which largely those books kind of stink, but whatever, it's there. And so I would love to see Iden Versio, that story in Battlefront 2, also start pointing in that direction. In fact, maybe she goes and works for the Chiss or something like that. That would be a pretty wild little ending. I think they could do a lot of impressive stuff with the single player story in that. So I am really looking forward to it. Anyway, let's move on to some other stuff. So Battlefront 2, though, just, quick review. Battlefront 2, Inferno Squadron, awesome book. Really dark, very different from the rest of the Star Wars universe. In fact, it's kind of the level of darkness that I was expecting Rogue One to be, but Rogue One wasn't. So because of all we know, because, Ben Mendelsohn, or was it, Mendelsohn that said it? Yeah. I mean, he was saying that, look, there's like 4 different cuts of this film. He said there's all these scenes, there's different ways that they were done. There's whole like pieces of dialogue missing. We know there's very different versions of the movie Rogue One out there. And that kind of leads into what I want to talk about next, because with episode 9, we found out, so we're getting away from Battlefront 2, Inferno Squadron talk. Again, awesome novel, has a great tone for Star Wars and has a lot of interesting aspects. Not a whole lot that necessarily adds to the Star Wars universe. I mean, it's nice that the Kage Warriors are back and everything in it from the Clone Wars, but it fleshes out that time frame a lot more, which I thought was a nice touch. So very enjoyable book. And Christy Golden, of course, is phenomenal. And listening to the audiobook in particular, like I said, with Janina Gavankar delivering on that, she delivers. She is solid as a rock. It's so good. Okay, so episode 9, news came out that they brought in another writer. Okay, now there's I have theories around this. There's more to say about it. Originally, what was going on is you had the director for episode 9. Now, we're not talking about The Last Jedi. The Last Jedi is pretty much done, and that seems to be the movie. That movie and The Force Awakens are like the 2 Star Wars productions that haven't been affected by anything. They seem to have how to put this. Somehow everything went smoothly with those. And I don't know how exactly it all went smoothly, because this is very concerning. No other Star Wars production, as far as movies go anyway, seem to be going smoothly at all. In fact, it's very troubling how these things are going, but we'll break more into that. But anyway, so originally you had for episode 8, you have Rian Johnson's doing a great job, I'm sure. I imagine, I'll just say quickly, Last Jedi, I think, is going to be an awesome movie. I don't have any doubts about The Last Jedi. I am concerned about episode 9 a little bit, because the news came out that Colin Trevorrow, who of course is probably best known for doing Jurassic World, which I thought was a fantastic movie. I mean, just a great fucking movie. Him and his buddy, who also worked on Jurassic World, Derek Connolly, were originally writing the story for episode 9. Now we find out that we have a guy, this guy's name is Jack Thorne, who's coming in. He's done a little bit of works here and there. I think he's worked in like the Harry Potter franchise. He's done some other stuff. So, not to say that he isn't somewhat of a big name. But anyway, Jack Thorne is coming in to do some rewrites. Now, what is the purpose behind these rewrites for episode 9? I think there's anyway, I'll tell you about that in a second. You got just a little something in the YouTube live chat. Couldn't get through 2 chapters of the first Aftermath book. Yeah, the first Aftermath book, like I was saying, by Chuck Wendig, really bad. And I think that one's just called Aftermath. The next one's like Life Debt, and then the other one, Empire's End, I think, is the third one. Anyway, yeah, that first book, really, really rough. With the audiobook, it's passable, but it's just passable. Okay, so anyway, so you got Jack Thorne coming on board to write for episode 9. The reason that I think that this is happening, not because there's something wrong with episode 9, because I think there's been an overall kind of arch that ever since The Force Awakens, and even with what J.J. Abrams set up, that they knew that they were going to go with. Okay, so I don't think they can really harm that too much. The reason I think Jack Thorne is coming in for episode 9, again, not too worried. I'm actually not too worried about episode 9. I think I said I was worried. I'm not too worried about it. There's going to be a point of disappointment that I'll mention in a second. Is that now it would appear, in my opinion, my interpretation of some statements from other people involved in Star Wars, is that it would appear that Leia, General Organa, Princess Leia, whatever you want to call her, to me, she's always royalty. She is not going to be in episode 9, seemingly at all. When before, I think everybody was kind of wondering, okay, are they going to recast her? Which is what I wanted to happen. In fact, I had said, and I wasn't the first person to come up with this, but when the person I heard said it, I was like, oh, that's obvious. Of course, that's who you'd want. I was hoping for Kate Mulgrew, from Janeway, Orange is the New, Janeway from Star Trek Voyager, Orange is the New Black, all that. I thought she would lend the gravitas necessary, to continue on that character. Or was she going to be a CGI job, kind of like Leia was at the very end of Rogue One? Spoiler alert. Now it seems, based upon some statements that John Boyega made recently, that they're doing a send-off, and he says it's a great, beautiful send-off of the character of Leia in episode 8. And so I think that the rewrites for episode 9 are really just about how to fix the fact that Leia's not going to be in episode 9. I think that that's all that's going on. I mean, it might be more, and we won't find out because, production doesn't begin until this coming January 2018. But that's my opinion on it. Also, when you're doing kind of pre-production, like I'm sure Colin Trevorrow is right now, you can't really put your mind on writing things. Yeah, you need another guy to step in and, maybe massage things or whatever while you're doing all the pre-production work. You're working with the storyboard artists and, like Doug Chiang or whatever, and, and all these different people. Well, I don't know if Doug Chiang's doing the storyboard work for episode 9, but anyway, I'm not so worried about that, but it does suck that it seems clear by Boyega's statement that no, Leia will not be in episode 9. However, it also seems clear, and this is the part that's what's disappointing, but what's not so disappointing is it sounded like he was saying that they are not killing off the character. She's just, whatever their send-off is, it's going to be beautiful, but she's always going to be around. And I hope, when I first read it, I didn't interpret it this way, but some have. I hope it doesn't mean that it's just going to be some kind of Force ghost. I have no interest if she's just going to be a Force ghost. I mean, that's fine and would certainly make it easier to create her in CGI, and maybe then she could still be in episode 9, but yeah, I don't know. So I think that change is happening, and if there's been any, reshoots, the infamous reshoots, maybe if there's any for episode 8, they've probably been based around that. And like I said, in the last Star Wars update that I did for Sovereign Tech patrons, you had, you're having in the Poe Dameron series, it's being made clear that Leia, General Organa, is setting up Poe Dameron to be the replacement. Like, I mean, it's almost explicit, to be the replacement for her when she goes, that he will be the head of the Resistance in that case, which, because in that time frame, it's the Resistance, not the Rebellion. So yeah, that's what I think is happening with episode 9. That's my interpretation of it, is it's just to fix the Leia thing, somehow. And I get it. Like, yeah, I mean, it's so sad. It's still so sad what happened with Carrie Fisher, the other thing too, or the other part that I think he might actually be doing, and this kind of gets into, with Inferno Squadron, where you have this attempt to kind of keep the Empire going, by Iden Versio, Janina Gavankar's character. I think that maybe there is going to be in episode 9 and maybe parts of episode 8, I don't know, but this threat that Thrawn talks about and that gets talked about in the Aftermath trilogy, that's coming from the unknown regions, that the Empire is actually going to be a faction, not the First Order, but the actual Empire, and maybe the Chiss somehow, because there was that synergy that you seem to understand, or that connection that you seem to understand from the Thrawn book, that the Empire will kind of come back. And that could be really cool, if that happens. And so in episode 9, like, you're going to have the Resistance and the Empire versus whatever this, unknown threat is, which the unknown threat might be kind of what's behind the scenes. It'd be like Snoke's, it'd be like, Supreme Leader Snoke. They'd be what's behind the First Order, and that the First Order isn't necessarily the Empire kind of resurgent. I don't know, a lot of guesswork there on my part, but I could see where you would bring in, now, I mean, this is kind of a minor point, but Jack Thorne's a British guy that's the guy who's coming in for the rewrites of episode 9. Maybe Colin Trevorrow isn't doing the best job of like laying out that kind of that Imperial style, which is a very British style. Not necessarily, I don't think that was intentional at first in Star Wars, but it ends up becoming one, right? Because it was, the first Star Wars film was filmed in Britain. And so a lot of the extras, a lot of the actors were British. So maybe he's bringing in that British flair as well. Like, it takes a Brit to write a Brit. Does that make sense? I could really see that kind of, being a part of that. So yeah, so episode 9, again, I'm not too worried about it. I think there might be very good reasons why this Jack Thorne guy is coming in. It probably has to do with Leia, may have to do with the Imperials. And I think that'd be a cool storyline if the Galactic Empire, comes back and you find out that the First Order isn't even the Galactic Empire. I mean, we'll see. So other news, let's, and then we're running long. I'm probably going about an hour here. So other news, there is a composer finally announced for the Han Solo movie, which is another movie that, these side movies, this is where I get worried. I'll talk about it in a second, but let's talk about the composer. The composer for Han Solo, John Powell, who did the scores for the Bourne movies. I listen to the Bourne soundtracks all the time. They're very subdued, but when the action needs to hit highs, it can do it. I think he's a fine choice. I love John Powell's work, what he's put out there and what I've listened to. So no problem there. I think that, I mean, it's not Michael Giacchino, and it's intriguing that he wasn't being offered this. But also I think John Powell did the scores for How to Train Your Dragon. So maybe they wanted somebody that could do like more of a lighthearted score, because if the Han Solo movie is a lighthearted, little more comedic film, then yeah, that makes sense. But I have no problem with that news. John Powell, doing it, like I said, if you listen to his Bourne soundtracks, phenomenal. I mean, really gives a lot of weight to, because, in the Bourne movies, like Matt Damon usually doesn't say a whole lot. So you have to let the music kind of compose, or, kind of guide you as to what, and of course, Matt Damon's demeanor, as Jason Bourne in those movies, but you got to let those things guide you as to what's going on. And so, yeah, John Powell, plenty of talent, not worried about him being that at all. But I am worried about the Han Solo movie in general. I am worried about kind of this, and I hinted at this recently. Maybe it was in a Patreon episode. I'm a little worried about the Star Wars saga overall, in a lot of ways, because I feel like they are Disney and Lucas, which owns Lucasfilm. They're so scared to do anything less than, $1 billion releases as far as movies go. That they're being too cautious. Like, they're being so cautious to make sure it can appeal to as many fucking people as possible. And this is a problem in Hollywood in general. It's not just Star Wars. Yeah, we're going to lose something special. We're going to lose that. I mean, I know people don't like the prequels or whatever, but there was kind of a one voice, which is what you want. There was a one voice, even though, everybody was playing yes men to Lucas, and maybe it shouldn't have been so much yes men. Maybe he should have listened to Spielberg a little bit more, who, certainly had some questions about some of his, cinematic choices with the prequels and all that. But I think it's starting to look a little strange, like a little weird, that they're just, now it feels like they're being too cautious now. I don't think the episode 9 news necessarily has to do with that, but certainly all of these side stories. Yeah, I think they're kind of dropping the ball on these. And I know a lot of people are talking about how there's going to be an Obi-Wan Kenobi movie that'll come out soon. They better announce those things fast. They need to start announcing more shit coming out. because the bad news around Rogue One, around Han Solo, Carrie Fisher dying, a lot of these other things. I mean, I think you're going to start eventually, whether the populace, whether the people listen to all of that, or pay attention to that news very deeply. Eventually, there's just going to be like this kind of ethereal narrative out there that Star Wars productions are in serious trouble, and eventually that's going to affect ticket sales. So they got to be really careful. Very, very careful. I've heard some great justifications for kind of the troubles and bringing in why they brought in Ron Howard and everything for the Han Solo movie, because there wasn't enough respect being paid to Lawrence Kasdan and all that. I really understand that, and I hope that that's the truth, but it just looks bad. And eventually this is going to become, the negativity around the production of these things is going to become way too pervasive. And so they've got to be careful of being too careful. Lucasfilm, in my opinion. But obviously I'll be lined up no matter what news comes out. I am going to line up for any one of these movies at any time. Doesn't matter what they announce that the movie is. It could be a movie about the Porgs. You see those guys, those little creatures that are going to be in The Last Jedi. They're kind of the new Ewoks, the Porgs, even though you're probably only going to see them for a fucking second, but because they're so cute and they make such a great marketing machine, of course, Disney's, playing them up to the hilt. But I mean, they could make a Porg film. And I'd go see that certainly well before I go see the fucking Emoji movie, that pile of shit. Yeah, let's see. So in the YouTube live chat, it says everything seems like it's being run by committee, which is ironic, right? Because what would Princess Leia say? I'm not a committee. But yeah, everything does seem to be run by committee, and that's a problem. When you're crafting a universe like this, and I can say, not that I have the success of the Star Wars universe or anything fucking remotely that looks like success. Okay. But with the Sovereign universe, like, I like to hear from people and get their thoughts on everything. But at the end of the day, you really do need the person that says, no, this is how we're going to do it. You really kind of need that one voice when it comes to the creative process. And I'm worried that, it does sound like everything's being done by committee, and there's a lot of heads, a lot of fingers in the pies, and it's trapping everything up. It's really becoming, a very serious problem. In fact, but like I said, it's not just Star Wars. This is happening across the board. Already people are talking about like the Dark Tower movie, which should have been like an instantaneous hit and an easy make. Apparently this is not that great of a movie. And a lot of people are already blaming it on the fact that there was like 3 parties that had veto power in what happens in the film. Okay. That's a problem. You really, 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 you need that one voice there kind of taking care of business. And so it says in the YouTube live chat, how much is the Unicode cartel paying you to bash the Emoji movie? They're paying, it's crazy. Everything you see here was funded by the Unicode cartel. I give the Emoji movie a 100 emoji out of 10. That's said in YouTube live chat. Oh man. Some things, you're never going to watch. You're never going to even take the time. That's like, wasn't there an Angry Birds movie? Did that come out? I don't even care. So anyway, yeah, we can start wrapping things up here. But overall, I'm very excited. The comic books have been pretty good as late. Like I said, the Rogue One adaptation I thought was really cool. The Darth Maul comic series, which I still don't know why that release schedule seemed to be so drawn out and long, but that's been very good. The new Darth Vader series has been solid. Screaming Citadel, which I could do a whole review on, and I need to. Maybe I'll do that for the second Star Wars update that'll be coming out, on Patreon. That was awesome. That was kind of like Battlefront II Inferno Squadron, where it was really blazing kind of a new tone and some new ground in Star Wars. So I thought that was, that was very cool. So, what else? Yeah. I mean, overall, there's still exciting stuff. I think some of the novels coming out, look really cool. I kind of feel like Star Wars has really got to get past episode 9 before anything really big can happen. Or maybe even just past episode 8. Maybe it just needs we got to get past episode 8 so that way all the fucking mystery can finally get answered and we can get back to, expanding more in the comics and the movies and everything. Because eventually, for those of us like myself who reads everything, pretty much the instant it comes out, be it the comic books, the books, whatever, that goes to the movie's opening day, that, buys all the games, that, that does all, you've got to give those people some kind of fucking payoff. You have to pay, you've got to pay the teas. You got to give them a reason for why all this is here. And I kind of feel like that payoff may not really come until episode 9, because like, if you consider, kind of like what we talked about, the Aftermath trilogy, if that was supposed to be the fucking payoff for between Return of the Jedi to The Force Awakens, because he had that journey to The Force Awakens, that's a shitty ass payoff, Disney. I mean, you fucked up. Like that was really, really bad. But now, we're already in the road and the books are starting to come out, which now they're doing the journey to The Last Jedi. You got to do a better job of giving us a payoff with that, which I think they're starting to, because actually that's just the last thing that I'll mention before I wrap things up here. They have 2 books coming out. I think they're both coming out September 1st. I have both pre-ordered, of course, on Audible. And actually kind of important to do that pre-order, because I know a lot of people like to torrent these things, and certainly I can understand the argument for torrenting, because, to get past the DRM, especially if you buy the books or the audiobooks or whatever already. I've noted I haven't seen on the torrents, and let's say I heard that through a third party. I haven't seen that Inferno, that Battlefront II Inferno Squadron is really available either as an audiobook or otherwise. So, and it's been over a week, I think, since it came out. So yeah, doing that pre-order, getting that Audible, book, I mean, that's great. But this will be kind of new ground in that it's 2 books coming out on the same day, September 1st, 2 full books. And normally it's only been like a book a month. So I'm a little concerned about that, but maybe there's just that much story to tell before December that they couldn't wait, we have to release these 2 books right away. The one book one of them is a Princess Leia story, and that's being written by Claudia Gray, who wrote the phenomenal, two of the best books of the entire new Star Wars canon, that being she wrote Lost Stars, which was a surprise hit. And that was part of the journey to The Force Awakens. And she wrote Bloodlines, which was also a Princess Leia novel that took place just 6 years before The Force Awakens, which was phenomenal, but it didn't come out. I mean, it should have come out before, it would have been much better than Aftermath. It should have come out before the movie hit, but it came out after the movie hit, whatever. But anyway, Claudia Gray will be doing a book. It's just called Leia, Princess of Alderaan. Looking forward to that. And then there's going to be a book by Delilah S. Dawson, which is about Phasma, about the character of Captain Phasma, which some people, myself included, felt we didn't get enough of in The Force Awakens. So that'll be cool to have. And I think this is going to end up being an in-between story. Or maybe it'll be the comic book that's the in-between story, where it explains what exactly happens between The Force Awakens and The Last Jedi. Because we know she survives. How does she survive and all that? So both of those will be coming out September 1st. I'll probably... Leia is in many ways kind of my top character. It's always a toss up between her and Thrawn. I'll probably, listen to the Leia book first, and then I will listen to the Phasma book after that. And then I'll do a Star Wars update in September covering both of those. And I'll do a review just like I'm doing now. So anyway, a lot of exciting stuff happening still. Like I said, regardless of the concerns around the productions of a lot of these movies, again, I'm still disappointed over Rogue One, because I really think that Rogue One was a good movie for Star Wars. When just because it's a Star Wars movie, it's automatically great. Okay. I mean, in reality, but within the Star Wars saga, it's a good movie, not so much like the greatest. Okay. But I think there was the potential, and I talked about this on Star Wars updates in the past, that it could have been the greatest Star Wars movie. But somebody, the committee, the bean counters, whatever, I think they fucked with things. So yeah, I'm a little worried about that. But overall, a lot of what's going on in the Star Wars universe, especially in other areas outside of the movies, there's some fairly cool stuff happening, if not downright exciting. So anyway, that's it for this. Let's see. Audiobook is on worldwide torrents. I didn't see it. Okay. Or a little bird didn't see it. So, okay. Well, maybe it's there. Yeah. Someone told them that. Good. I'm glad. Well, boy, I shouldn't even say that. Whatever. I said it. There it is. Yay, torrenting. Anyway, and yay, Star Wars, of course. That's it for this episode. Of course, this is kind of a unique animal, like I said, where I want to try and entice people, say, hey, do you want to, check this out? Maybe you want to become a patron. Okay. And, because this is the kind of content you get, not just all the tech talk, not just all the sexy, but you get some great geeky shit too, and I have a Star Trek update also coming up in August as well, because there's a lot to talk about what's going on there. A whole lot to talk about before we get the September start of Star Trek Discovery. And obviously I'll be doing a Star Trek update for patrons, when that comes out as well. So don't expect that till the end of September, but there will be one in August where we talk about everything that's been revealed recently at the Star Trek Las Vegas convention, which is kind of always the biggest, the creation, or I don't even know if they're creation anymore. It's been so long since I've done the convention circuit. But anyway, that's it. You'll have a new Sex and Science Hour coming out, new Sovereign Tech, of course, and we'll be talking a lot of blockchain on that. I will see you on the other side. And I can never bring myself to say, may the force be with you. As much as I love Star Wars, I always thought they sounded kind of cheap. So I don't know, maybe the Sith will come out with some kind of statement at some point that, will be comparable to the force, may the force be with you or something. But anyway, I'll see you on the other side.